to the New Churches podcast. I'm Jeff Metters, and we're joined today by Jon Kelly, Elizabeth Woodson, and Dean Inserra, and we're continuing our journey through the book of Acts, learning church planting from the early church. And we arrive today at Acts 16, looking at the essential elements of planting a church and leading a church and pastoring a church, of developing leaders and teams. So I want to begin with a little bit of a lengthy text, but I think it's so important for you to hear this whole passage and kind of catch the flavors and the notes and the themes that Luke is recording for us from the Apostle Paul. So listen along at Acts 16, 1 through 10. Luke writes that Paul went on to Derbe and Lystra, where there was a disciple named Timothy, the son of a believing Jewish woman, but his father was a Greek. The brothers and sisters at Lystra and Iconium spoke highly of him. That's important. Paul wanted Timothy to go with him. So he took him and circumcised him because of the Jews who were in those places, since they all knew that his father was a Greek. As they traveled through the towns, they delivered the decisions reached by the apostles and the elders at Jerusalem for the people to observe. So the churches were strengthened in the faith and grew daily in numbers. They went through the region of Phrygia and Galatia. They had been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. When they came to Mysia, they tried to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. Passing by Mysia, they went down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision in which a Macedonian man was standing and pleading with him, "Cross over to Macedonia and help us." After he had seen the vision, we immediately made efforts to set out for Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel to them. A couple things strike me about that text. They're pretty common in planting and in the book of Acts that we should draw attention to. One, Paul identifies Timothy, sees him, and there's something obviously about Timothy that makes Paul want to say, I want him on my team. So I want us to think about that. And secondly, how often we can miss the language change from Paul to we, from Paul to us. Like, obviously, Paul received the dream. Luke doesn't say he received this vision, this dream, but that Paul does. And Paul obviously must have shared it. And Luke writes, and we determined that God had called us. Through Paul's dream, God had called them to go and preach the gospel to Macedonia. So let's begin here. The Paul to Timothy connection. How can sending churches, church planters who want to be a church planting church, how can they find their Timothys? What should they be looking for? And what are some qualities? What sticks out to a guy that makes you go, that's who we need to include? John, let's begin with you.
Yeah, I think discipleship is crucial. I mean, that's the foundation of it all. When you talk about leadership development, you could kind of jump way down the road and, looking for a leader or trying to put people in leadership positions. But it all starts with the basis of just being discipled and being in small groups, serving faithfully. And so, the faithful, available, teachable. I know that's kind of, we say that all the time, but it's so true. Yeah. And I think in church planting, we often look like, man, anyone who's an able body to come that's humble, that's teachable. But I'm always looking for those qualities of, man, is this brother or sister, are they faithful? Are they humble enough to be taught? Are they prayerful? What is their spiritual intimacy temperature like with Christ? Yeah, you don't want people on the team that's just smart or just gifted, but then their prayer life is just weak, right? Because what you see with Paul is he's praying. People are praying and God is moving. So I would just say I'm looking for spiritual intimacy with Christ, and a teachability and a willingness and capacity. Yeah. I've had times where people want to go, but they just don't have the capacity, certain season of life. So, it's an art to it. I don't think it's any kind of like black and white, look for this, look for that. There's just kind of a lot of nuance there.
Yeah, it's helpful, brother. Yeah, for sure. Dean, I know you guys have planted lots of churches, involved and doing all kinds of things there in Florida.
Yeah, well, character and competency, those are the two things. I want someone that walks with the Lord and someone that wants to see other people walk with the Lord and is diligent in doing that. So a high character person without any kind of competency, you can definitely, certainly, they still are called to use their gifts in the church, where those gifts may be. Right. But there are certain ceilings they can hit, and that's okay. But if someone with the high competency but doesn't have the character, then they don't need to be anywhere near leadership. So I think we have to really look at those two things and not see them at odds with each other, and see them not as 50-50, but like 100% both. And that doesn't mean they'd be hitting home runs and competency out of the gate. It doesn't mean they'd be a 10 out of 10. Yeah. But it means there is like, this person actually can do this. Like, we actually see something in this person that they can accomplish this task that's before them. And I think one of the things that's kind of slowed the church down in development of leaders is resumes. where we just depend on finding somebody from somewhere else and bringing them in,
I see what you're saying.
rather than hiring people within our own church.
Yeah.
So it's not a rule, but right at the point while we're doing this podcast, that 100% of our staff is from within. Every single person on our staff right now, it's not a rule, but it's a preference, already were members of our church. And when the need became available for that leadership position, that staff position, we went to people within our own church family first that we thought had those two things, that had the character and had the competency. And the great thing is they already love their church. They already get their church. They're already part of the DNA. If they didn't work for our church, they'd still go to our church. And we've had people leave staff for whatever life phase kind of reasons. They've all usually, if they stayed in Tallahassee, they stayed members. And stayed active and stayed engaged.
Yeah.
So we have to develop leaders if we want to keep that culture.
Yeah. Elizabeth, we see in the text that pivot from Paul to we to us, that I don't want any planter to lose sight of that. Yeah. Like, that is a really powerful moment in the book of Acts, all throughout the book of Acts, because we often will say things like, "Oh, Paul's the greatest church planter that ever lived." Like, well, he actually was never alone.
Right.
He's got Silas, he's got Barnabas, he's got Timothy, he's got Luke, he's got John Mark at certain points and different points. So like church planting teams, there's so much that we could say about church planting teams. So how can a planter who's leading a team, how can he foster that kind of shared ownership of the vision, of the call, of the plant, to go from the planter to we to us?
Yeah, I think partly is just in language. And so how you talk to your people, how you invite them into the vision, how you invite them to contribute to the vision. So it's not just what you want to do, it's what we are doing together. Obviously, you've been set apart to lead, but it is kind of a team effort. I think also in the ability to give things away. And so how much are you delegating? How much are you sharing ownership of a particular task? Even if that person is not going to do it perfectly, that you are inviting them to help contribute versus just watching you do everything.
Yeah, that's good. John, what's some things you've done in Chicago?
Yeah, I was going to say, so right now we're trying to plant a church on the south side of Chicago, and we have a church planting couple, husband and his wife. We're being sent out. But our goal is to send people from our church as they engage the community, make disciples. We want to be a sending church. So I think some of it, too, is the sending church creating a culture of sending people. Yeah. And as Dean said, there's a variety of people. There's for sure character, that we call it the 3 C's: character, competency, and capacity. And so we want our leaders to check those boxes. But we understand that some people that go, there's some people that's new to the faith. There's some people that have just come to faith in Christ that they're ministering to on the south side, and they join the core team. And so I think some of it, too, that's helpful for the planter is to have a good sending church that is releasing people and sending people, even their best leaders. I mean, that is a gift for a church planter to have seasoned leaders on the team with them. So a lot of it has to do with sending church as well.
Yeah, that's wise.
And I advise planters, give away responsibility quickly, but be careful how fast you give away leadership.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because a lot of the things we talk about, it's very theoretical. People come out and think it has to be plurality, and it's okay, but they want to implement everything they read in a book in the first week.
Yeah.
So you're handing away leadership to people you don't know.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful of that. This is what you have given your life to go start this church, and you just can't hand away stuff.
Yeah,
that's different than development. Responsibility, yes. Give away, hey, I'm going to let you take this on, but like leadership, be very careful and be slow to give that away. Responsibility fast, leadership slow. I worry for guys out of the gate. They're knighting people as elders before they even really know them, and then before they've actually got the church started, and before we know they actually have the chemistry and have the character and have the competency. And I just really get a little anxious for guys that are just so quick to want to implement all their ecclesiological dreams, into their church plant out of the gate. And it's like, easy, tiger, slow down.
Be a church plant.
Be a church plant for a while.
You're not an established church right out of the gate.
And I think in this moment, there's a lot of focus on the one charismatic leader. And so whether it's how you position yourself on social media, that people see that your church doesn't just revolve around you, because I think that you can unintentionally create narcissistic leaders. And it's how can I constantly take the focus off of me and put it on my people so it's shared? So that we're not developing people who the focus is just you, but it's your people, it's your team.
Yeah.
That's good.
So that's I agree with that. So that's a great way to hand away responsibility. Other people are doing things. It's not all dependent upon me, and that's important early on, because that also creates more buy-in.
Yes.
So which allows more leaders to be developed, because now they're more excited about the opportunity to serve in this capacity in this church.
Yeah, and I think there's a tension I know I felt as a planter of You have roles that you need to fill, so you don't do everything. So the temptation is to hand away something too soon and not have the discernment to know, hey, this is the right person on the right bus, but you could put someone in the wrong seat. Yeah. And I just found that it's very painful to remove someone out of the wrong seat when you got it wrong. Yeah. So the pain of seeing the empty seat is always less than the pain of removing someone out of that seat. That can create conflict and a bunch of different things. So to move slowly and to not be quick to appoint a leader, as Paul said to Timothy, is wise.
Yeah, now I worry for guys, man. They're coming in, we're all co-pastors. We're all, I'm like, in your mind you are.
Really define that, really
careful.
itemize everything. I remember, being with some guys who had co-pastors. A lot of guys who do that, and some of them have really spelled things out well, and others, I just said, let's ask the hard questions. Who can fire who? Yeah, like who's going to hold each other accountable? Like what actually is happening in these leadership dynamics? Because if you don't spell stuff out, just gray areas, fogginess can lead to all kinds of trouble. And I like what you're saying.
And oftentimes you think they're co-pastors, the church doesn't.
Yeah,
but
whoever's preaching
there's
most.
a leader.
Yeah.
I mean, there's someone people see ultimately as a leader.
Yep.
And to be fair, too, like, one of the challenges about church planting is compared to, like, when your church is more established, you don't have the resources. Like, you don't have an IT person. You don't have the website. So you got, like, I was doing our website. I was doing the emails. I was doing the e-blast and all that. And sometimes you got to work with what you got to work with. And it may not be... I hate to sound this way, but it might not be the best option. The person might not be the most seasoned in that. And I do think there's a temptation to just appoint. And I don't know if you get into that, but I think that's where development comes in as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember Adam Mutasib, friend of the show, Sin Network planner. He said, I think in season 1, or maybe it was him and I just having coffee, which happens. I have a lot of coffee with a lot of guys, so I can't remember all the conversations. But he just very helpful. He said, give out tasks before you give out titles.
Responsibility for leadership.
Responsibility. I mean, it is.
He told me he owes me royalties.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a helpful principle to remember. Yeah. I mean, these principles of shared leadership, seeing the delegation, seeing some responsibilities and tasks shared are really important. You got all kinds of people that are growing in their faith, growing in responsibilities, and that God has given people spiritual gifts that they need to use. You need to equip the planters and pastors, equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And one unique thing we see right now is happening is among college students, and SALT Network, which you're involved with and connected to Sin Network, does a lot of planting in university towns, college cities, all that kind of stuff. So Dean, tell us a little bit about what is going on in SALT Network and how God is using you guys. What's happening in SALT?
Yeah, well, we really are asking the Lord for Judges 2 not to be a reality in this generation, where we see that there's a generation who forgot God and the things that he had did for Israel. And we're saying, Lord, we don't want to lose a generation. And you see all the stats that this generation is doing this and this generation isn't in church and non-religious that you saw years ago. And we just want to say, not on our watch. So we think a massive mission field in America are university cities, is the college campus. So we're not planting college churches. We're planting hopefully multi-generational churches in college towns, in university city settings. And what is neat about it is it immediately requires, to get all the work done that's out there, college students to lead. So we have student leadership development programs in the SALT Network, and we're having them be sent and move across the country to go help a church plant, to be the best church members there are to get it started. And one of our values we have for our college ministry is we want to create good church members. So if one of our church members graduates and moves to Chicago for work, that when they show up at John's church, they're a great church member. And he's calling me and going, man, who is this guy, man? He's here ready to work, ready to serve, and ready to get to work. And that's what we want to do, is create great church members. And because we don't think college students have to wait for that. They might not be senior pastors yet or be elders yet, but they're leading and they're the ones that are making this happen. So if you're a sophomore, by the time you're a sophomore, we're already training you to be a student leader and to have you lead in the ministry. And that means you're going to be leading a group, you're going to be leading teams, leading others. So we want to empower students early to be able to do that, because they want to lead early, and not in the lack of humility kind of way, but they're eager. They see needs. They want to reach their campus. So we don't want to say, hey, wait your turn down the road. We're saying, hey, let's do it now. So we're going to create like a real, actual, vibrant college ministry through the local church in these college towns. But it goes back to planting. Like, we're planting churches in university cities, and the college students are a big part of that planting force to make that happen. So rather than saying, wait your turn, it's we need you to go be the ones to get it going and start now. So we'll be sending out, we're hopefully sending out every couple of years a new, or even less than that, a new college community church plant plant with a non-college student as the pastor, but with an army of college students with that person to go infiltrate that town and campus in that city, through the local church. And it's awesome.
It's so incredible, and it may be helpful. I'd love to hear just from each of you, like briefly, on kind of what you see God doing in the 18 to 24, 25-year-olds. Like, what do you see God doing in your different contexts? We're all in different parts of the U.S. So, John, what are you seeing God doing among the young people?
Man, they're like the most energized, faithful demographic. I mean, our church is a large percentage of, I would say, 18 to 25-year-olds. And they serve in children's ministry. They go on mission trips. They're teachable. They're hungry. I just don't think I was prepared to invest in them to the degree that they were hungry for. Yeah. When I look back over the years of church planting, you talked a lot about development and leadership development. I just didn't do that well. In the beginning, I felt so much tension to appoint someone in a role that I missed in front of me just the hard work of, helping someone grow in Christ and in maturity that someone who's not there now can be. And so I think we've seen that over the years, and we're trying to leverage that. And most of our missionaries that we've sent out, actually, all of our missionaries that we've sent out over the years full-time are all under 25.
Wow.
Or at least we're sent out under 25 to the nation. So, our oldest last year was about 28. But that young demographic, they're the ones that's filling the missions trips. They want to serve. They're in the hard places. When we're on the street corner with gangs, they're right out there on the corner. So,
man.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the same thing. It's just really a hunger for depth in the word. And so they don't want the sugary sweet answers. They want to know beyond just, okay, this is how I choose a Bible. This is how I do inductive Bible study. It's people on my college campus or my friends have really hard questions about faith. And so can you teach me how to think comprehensively about what it means to be a Christian in this world? And so in some places where maybe an older generation might have a separation between what's happening culturally and what happens inside the walls of the church, this generation is like, my faith has to match what I believe of what it means for me to show up as a believer in this current cultural context.
And they want to stand for Christ.
They do.
They just need some help. Like, they're in that generation of AI and technology. I mean, I didn't have Instagram growing up. Yeah. We had Polaroid cameras. And,
thank God.
They're thinking through things that we just never had to think through. And they're just like, man, would you help me think through this biblically? So even in our church, like we've now rolled out a whole apologetics kind of like department to kind of address issues because we realize we want to really equip the saints in ways that's topics that's far vaster than what we're preaching on just on Sunday in general. So,
I'm seeing them being willing to make decisions, like life decisions based on the mission of God. To where it doesn't mean they're going overseas, and getting their passport to be a full-time missionary, but they're, willing to, they're in nursing school and they want to go be a nurse in a town we're going to plant and go be a great church member.
Yeah, that's great.
That wasn't thought. I don't know a lot of people who were doing that, for a very long time. It was like, if you were going to be a missionary, like a literal, full-time missionary, you go and do that. But you're not thinking about, where can I go be an engineer? For the glory of God, which is anywhere, but but specifically and intentionally based on the fact that my home church is planting a church in Huntsville, Alabama. I can go be an engineer there and be a great small group leader. Just like I'm actually seeing them thinking that way, not just where's the best job, where's the coolest city, where I've always wanted, what's close to mom, but rather where can I actually go help right now out of college and make an impact. Another thing I'm seeing is that I'm talking about Christian college students here. Like this is the context of this, is that they are really seeing the lies of the world. The ideologies, anything from the false promises of what happiness and satisfaction looks like, all the way to be pushing back on just some of the ideologies you hear on the college campus. And they're pushing back on those things. And they're really valuing truth and valuing beauty and valuing meaning and contending for what T.S. Eliot called the permanent things, things that last. They care about family, they care about the church. And those are just neat things we need to keep cultivating as they're realizing the lies of the world that is kind of fool's gold. And they're not buying it.
Yeah. And I think they're also challenging the church. I have found them to ask questions that they don't always get the good answer for. And so in spaces where it might feel like deconstruction or doubt, it really is, man, I have questions that go underneath the layer of what it means to be a Christian, and they're pushing the church to have more depth in what it means to live as a people of God in this generation. And I think it feels hard, but to me, it is really good fruit that's being born from that.
Yeah. And then that's great. I love that. And there's some that are trying to figure out how to live for Jesus. They're still partying on Friday and coming to church on Sunday, and they're, living with their boyfriend, but they know they have guilty conscience towards that, and they're trying to figure out, what does it mean for me? So there's still college students that are going, okay, I believe, I got to figure out how to make sure that what does repentance look like in areas that aren't convenient and seem strange. And so there's others that are trying to figure that out. But the good news is they actually want to figure it out. Like, rather than just going whatever and shrugging your shoulders and say, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do, you can see like conviction of things. Like, okay, like I know, help me walk through this. I need a mentor in my life. I need someone. So we're seeing some of that too, of students that usually just would have said, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do, and maybe down the road I'll get a little more serious about their faith. They're going, okay, I understand there's inconsistencies in my life. Can someone walk with me towards this?
Yeah.
And they're seeing the need I'll be honest, and to have someone disciple them. And I'm seeing a lot of that too.
I think you're highlighting something that we can forget. We think about leadership development and delegating and all that good stuff. Is if we just make a system to run people through and don't treat these people as people, and like really pastor these people as well, care for them as well, like that is all a part of their maturing and their developing in Christ, not just to run through our discipleship pathway.
Yep.
And so some of the things, we see with Paul, he is pastoring Timothy. He loves Titus, and he's pouring into all the different people in all of his letters that he sends, and cares for them as people. Doesn't just tell Timothy, come on, do what I told you to do, but fan into flame the gift that you have from the Lord. He's putting wind in his sails. He's encouraging him. But sometimes, I'm sure we could all talk about different churches we've been in, and we're like, my gifts weren't encouraged. They were discouraged, or I was seen as a threat to leadership because God had gifted me, or whatever. There's all kinds of stories we've all heard and maybe I've all experienced. So as a church planner, what are some of the temptations in leadership development that he needs to avoid, run from, and he needs to embrace? So John, we were talking before, and you're like, "Oh, I got plenty."
I got a lot of what
here.
you don't do. The temptation again for planters is to not do the hard work of development, which we call discipleship. Like even in sports, like I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, quick plug. But seriously, we had the same team of young guys from last year to this year. And the difference was we invested more in great teachers and development in the off season, and they brought more fruit out of our players. And I think there's wisdom in that, is that early on, it just takes slow work to take someone from spiritual infancy to spiritual maturity. Yeah. And it's just quicker to just try and find, if you don't do the slow work, you're just going to create a culture where you just try to find someone who's already arrived. And that's what I fell into. And what happens is like, as the church starts to grow, you have all these problems because you haven't really set up a discipleship structure that's really helpful to get someone in their spiritual gift to think through everything. And so for me, I would just say, when you talk about what not to do, the temptation is it's always easier to do it yourself. My son, for example, he's trying to learn how to make scrambled eggs. Oh, man. And I was teaching him this past week, and he's just not doing it right. And I didn't want him to burn down the house and my wife go crazy. So I took the pot back from him. But for him to learn, I'm just going to have to let him work through that. And the temptation is to be like, man, it's just easier to send the email myself. Yeah. It's easier to do this myself. And I think planters feel that tension that part of development means lower quality. The quality of whatever you're going to do is the quality of the person who's going to lead the small group. If they're learning, they're not going to lead it like Jeff leads it or Elizabeth leads it because they're new. Yeah. And one last thing about that too is, we talked about young people, but everyone's at different ages and spaces spiritually. So we had people on our core team who had just came to faith in Christ. There were guys that I thought, oh, he's been walking with the Lord for 20 years. He's great. And as I got to know him over 2-3 months, I realized he's in like year 3 of spiritual maturity. But we have to like re-disciple him because how he was discipled was wrong. And so it's not just kind of clean and nice and neat. Everyone's in different spaces. And if there isn't a system set up early, you'll burn yourself out trying to do everything. And you have a bunch of people who aren't growing and flourishing. It got to be bigger than just show up, find some way to serve, get in a small group.
Right.
It's got to be bigger than that. You know, the guy that's new today might be the church planter 10 years from now.
It's wise, brother.
I would say, don't refuse to be intimidated by the person who's excited, eager, has a million ideas, just wants to go.
Yeah.
Don't quench that fire. It's
they
easy
have
to,
righteous zeal.
It's easy to kind of be threatened by that person, but be very careful to know it all. Those are two very different people.
Yeah.
And be careful. The person always has a cynical spirit, who always knows better than you, who always would have done it this way. That's the person you don't want to have at the table. You do want to have the person who's just eager, just needs to be ironed out and have just like a place to be able to share the ideas. Like, you don't want to quench fires. Let those things be. And a lot of young leaders, especially, or leaders, aspiring leaders, they're just fired up. They're excited. They're someone's finally paying attention to them and hearing their ideas.
Yeah.
And
they want to serve Christ.
Let them run.
Yeah.
Let them be the announcements guy for a minute. Just let them run. Let her start that Bible study. Let her do. It's like let those things happen.
I think announcements is one of the more difficult.
It is. I'm terrible at it.
Yeah, same.
I'm a really bad group leader, and I'm bad at announcements.
They're tough things to do.
For preachers, it's not easy.
One thing I would add in there too is when you're in the core team phase or you're trying to build a team, a lot of time I see like guys go right to theology. So hey, here's the doctrinal points. Does this all line up? And the thing that I found that like was challenging for me the most was philosophy of ministry.
Critical.
So it's like, hey, we align on doctrine, but like the way we see discipleship playing out, it's just different. So for this person, discipleship was Sunday school class. This person, it was, small groups. This person. So like, man, what can really bump heads is you're like, oh, me and Jeff are in the same. We read the same books. We read the same blogs. But then the way you flesh out ministry is just
big.
different, and it could cause conflict on a team. And so, I would say, try to find out. Like, I know we have the same goal, but what do you believe is the method to get there? Do we have the same philosophy of to do things? I remember earlier on we had one guy who what I was calling excellence in worship, like just like of that, he took it as like a proud thing, like, hey, like it shouldn't take all that. Like, it's performance. That's the word. Like, and it's like, no, it's not performance, but like, but his philosophy was we were speaking two different languages, but our heart was in a good place. And it just created unnecessary friction that what I saw as excellence, he saw as performance. And it wasn't, he was bad. And we came around, he was like, yeah, I get it. But he just had bad experiences in the church he was before, and it affected how he saw things. So I would say philosophy of ministry is just as vital as theology when you're talking about teams and alignment.
Absolutely.
I agree with that 100%.
I think about the people that the Lord brings that might be more skilled than you are. And so if you're a younger planner, bringing older people, bringing folks from corporate America who've led teams and done a bunch of things, and so your insecurity can make it seem like if I help them do something, they're going to outshine me. And that we would receive the people the Lord sends and receive them with an open hand, and that if they shine, everybody shines. And then that's the goal.
Yeah, you're highlighting that sometimes planters can not delegate stuff, not develop people, because we do want things to be done excellently. The scriptures teach that. Ecclesiastes, do whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Like, do it the best you can. Chronicles talks about playing excellently before the Lord, skillfully, and all these kinds of things. But sometimes we can just say, yeah, we want, they're not ready, but the fear really is, there's actually a sin underneath that of pride, of spotlight, of greed. There could be all envy, all kinds of sins underneath. So I think any planter that's like slow to delegate, slow to invite people into the vision, slow to invite people into the mission is, hey, this is not about you. Like, this is about the Lord, and the Lord has called these people here. He's given them gifts. He wants to use them so wisely, skillfully, invite people in because they have a mission. Like one of the things we used to say a lot when I was planting was the mission of our church, give the mission statement, vision statement, all that good stuff, all from the scriptures. But to tell people in the church and to tell leaders and all that, this is not the statement of our 501c3. This is not our nonprofit mission. This is the mission of the church. And what we mean by that is this is not the mission of the pastors. This is the mission that you have. This is the mission of the church. So you are invited, and we're going to all own this together. And so when you look at Paul, he is obviously obsessed with developing people. He's writing letters to see them formed more in Christ. He's sending mission teams out. Epaphroditus is coming and going. You've got Timothy coming and going, Titus going, leaving him on Crete. And so he loves developing and loves sending. And so when you think about that, and we see the epistles and things that he taught, we need to love sending. We need to love training, love developing. What are some things that you would coach a planter in? And we'll start with Jon again, because Jon was just talking before show. I was like, I can't wait to hear all the stuff that Jon has to say. What are some things that you would think, all right, this is essential curriculum, not just information. It could be experiences. It could be heart, diving into heart matters. What are some essential things you would do in a discipleship leadership pathway?
The first thing, I mean, bigger before you even get to the pathway, is just creating a culture of being sent out. So I think before you even have your launch service, you need to be communicating to your core team that we want to send. We want to see churches planted. We want to send out missionaries. We had our first missions trip plant before we had our first service plant, and it was to Romania. And so we've been doing from the birth of our church, the idea of going out. And why were we trying to go on a missions trip? Well, we care about the global church, and we want you to see what God is doing around the world in hopes that some of you would go. And even if our core team right now is only at 30 people or 40 people or 20 people, and 2 of you or 3 of you said, man, I feel like God's called me to the nations right now, we would celebrate that. And we would want to send you out and pray for God. So I would just say creating a sending culture early on helps you down the line. It shapes the way you move forward. It's a whole framework that you're working from. So that's what I would just say is before you even get to the systems and structures, where are those things leading to? And if it's not leading to people going out the door being on mission, then you got to start there first.
Yeah, it's wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say providing opportunities for the things that we want to be developed in people to be developed in people. And so how are we creating discipleship pathways that help our core team, and then as it spreads out for people to be formed into the image of Christ. And so I'm a person who loves Bible study, loves kind of how do we form people in a deep knowledge of the word? How do we help those elements be involved in the church from the beginning? But also when it comes to developing leaders and discipleship, how are we doing that for women? And so women are an essential part of the church, and that we are raising them up to be strong and vibrant leaders, and that happens again from the very beginning of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. I love when you've got Apollos up there. He's teaching, but Priscilla and Aquila recognize he could be teaching the way of God a little more accurately, and they pull him aside and help him and encourage, we should be celebrating and thanking God for the Priscillas and Aquilas that are in our churches, helping even the planter himself, maybe if we want to apply it to Apollos, is a powerful preacher, but could be helped by other people in the church to serve a little more. Dean, what are some things you're doing out there in City Church?
Yeah, I like to map out things we want to see people become. Like, what do we think are marks of a true disciple? You know, and what is the kind of leader we want to see, and then disciple around those things. I mean, truly, have conversations around those things, disciple around those things. Those kind of clear. You know, we have 6 marks of a disciple, and we're going to disciple around those. I mean, I'm not trying to simplify it, but that's what we want to see. What do we? So because we only have so much time, just with a lot of college students in our church, what do we want to see them become, and who do we want them to be, and what kind of leaders? That's
good.
Boom. Let's roll in.
Yeah, I think we can sometimes in the church planning world and conversations, we can overcomplicate stuff and make it more difficult, or a lot of stuff demands and all kinds of other things. When we've got a Bible filled with information that we call people to where the Lord wants to take them. And so let's build stuff out. Let's get some resources, some trainings. Let's have some markers, and let's get after it, and let's pour into these people.
And included in those 6 things is sound doctrine. We want that to be a reality for them. Spiritual disciplines, generosity, a heart for the lost. Yeah. Those are things we want to cultivate in people.
We have clear pathways of we have a year and a half kind of track. We also have D groups. So we work with Replicate and use D groups. But we also went to every different ministry area, like women's ministry, youth ministry, men's ministry, and was we need a constructed plan that's very detailed that helps to push the ball down the field in equipping and discipleship. You can't do the totality of it, but we say it like this. It's like when you step in a river, it flows with the current. And we want the whole current going in this direction. Yeah. So no matter, because some people can't get in a small group because of their work schedule. Right. They might work second shift.
Kids,
kids, this and that. So you can't be you can't get in the D group or you can't get in this class because of your schedule. So we have to think through, how is the whole structure pushing them downstream? Because you got some people that are young kids. You got some people that came to faith in Christ and they're 65.
Yeah.
And so they still need to be discipled just like the college student. And they may have health issues. So how is all of our structure? So I would appeal to planters to think not just in, we got this 1-year track. You go through that. Or, when we first started, it was small groups. And then we realized that didn't work for everybody. Yeah. So that's what we could offer. So that's what I would say is think of different specific ways, but then also where is the current or the river flowing and make sure everything's headed in that direction.
And the top of the funnel for us is a residency program.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like the top shelf in terms of people that really want to get experience and exposure to like local church ministry, like staff level kind of positions.
Is that just for like, do you guys do it just for ministry, or is it also like missions, like going overseas as a missionary?
That's one of the areas in our church. You'd work with our missions ministry, like in your residency. You kind of choose the ministry area in the church that you have. And it's a 2-year program, and it offers some seminary as well, and it's great.
Sounds wonderful. Yeah. I'm so happy for the younger generation now, and I sound so old saying I'm only 40 years old, but for these young guys out there and young ladies out there who want to serve the Lord, whether it's on a church planting team or to become a church planter, like residencies were not a thing back when I was in my 20s, and now you've got churches willing to pour into you and invest into you so much. And what I love about Paul is we do see him investing a ton into one guy here, one guy there, a group of guys traveling with him. But then he's also investing wide into the entire church of Philippi, into the entire church at Corinth, staying 3 years in Ephesus. So how can a planter balance that? Because sometimes I see in planters, they get obsessed with leadership development and overly obsessed to where like that's all they talk about. Where it's like, well, are you going to disciple like the 54-year-old man who works in the factory? Is he going to be discipled? Is there a way for him to be cared for? Or is everything just leadership development?
Tim Keller's, what is it? The church dynamics. I forgot the
church
title.
Growth and size dynamics.
Man, that is phenomenal. And everything he was saying about, like, because what you talk about is different in different stages. So how you're dealing with 50 people is different than 200 people, and that's different than 500 people or 200 people. And so a lot of the things that I did that wasn't good early on was, at heart, I'm a shepherd. So meeting with a new guy, when you're a church planter and a new family comes in,
oh man,
you like, hey, here's my number.
Drop the
Can
streamers.
I meet with you for coffee?
Yeah.
Hey, meet you at Starbucks. Where you work? All right, I'll come over there. You work in the financial district? I'll meet you there. A couple comes over. Hey, we're gonna have you over for dinner. And I was so much at the front door connecting that as our church was growing, there was a leadership gap that our leaders weren't fully equipped to really serve everyone well. And that came back to me. So I had my kind of Exodus 18, Moses and Jethro moment where it was like, hey, this ain't good. All the people are coming to you. And so I would just say, like, I had to make a decision of either I can't meet with everyone and I really need to focus on the leaders. And that was hard for me because before I became a lead pastor and a church planter, I was a family pastor. So I stepped into the lead pastor seat with the mentality of a family pastor. And that just was not helpful for me. I was trying to connect with everyone. And at some point, I had to switch over to what's best for the church is for me to really spend the most of my time with the leaders, no matter what capacity they were doing, so that they could be equipped and multiply. So that's how the tension has worked out for me. It's hard, especially if you have a shepherd's heart. You just want to connect with everyone, but at some point, if you don't spend your time with your leaders like Jesus spent with the 12, it's going to trickle down to the rest of the church.
Some wisdom there, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's because you do have to be, like Jon is saying, I think wise with how you use your time, where the Lord is telling you your priorities should be. But are there creative ways that you can be present and just engage with people? And so, I mean, I've known pastors who they are walking that 4 year before service and connecting and interacting with people. And I've also known people be like, I'd never meet the pastor. Like, he hides in the back. That you have that meeting where people are able to come and learn about the church. You have those informal dinners and gatherings. Like, are there creative ways for you still to be engaged and to connect with people and to be present and still, I think, discipling in that aspect, as well as I'm doing the deep dives with just a few people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think we have to always have eyes for people. Eyes for people. And that's going to look different, again, as the church goes forward. So like similar to Jon, the best use of my time right now really is our leaders in our church. And then we have a large staff. So that means almost like the executive level leaders in our church. But then outside of that, I'm pastor in my hometown. So the other great use of my time is just being with local people who know me and I have a connection to, and we're trying to get to take a next step, and those type of things. And the church planting, like early, like first 3 years phase, you need to try to know everybody and meet with everybody and go all in and bring people with you.
Yes.
And that's great. As we go, kind of talking about Paul would have somebody go with them.
Yeah.
So they want to FaceTime with you. You're the planter. You're the one that is able to articulate the vision, probably the best out of the gate and those type of things. But bring with you that other person. Like, hey, I want to bring, John too. He's really, he's helping me and he's a volunteer and he's really core. I think one day he could maybe be, an elder here. That kind of thing. I want you to meet him. Incorporate people as you go, and I think that's really helpful. But those first 3 years, you need to meet with every daggum person you possibly can and connect with people because that is your busy. Again, you don't have a staff to lead. You shouldn't be taking 40 hours to write a sermon.
No.
And all your members are at work all day, so like you have the capacity and have the time to make that lunch, make that breakfast, go to coffee, like have some like make the time to do those kind of things because that should be your busy. Is people in those early days.
Right.
I would also just appeal to make that a culture of your leaders. Don't matter if you lead a small group or whatever, because at the end of the day, you could send someone through a pipeline. You could recommend, here's 4 leadership books, but you learn leadership through reps.
Yeah.
Like you have to get some experience. You got to watch someone. You don't learn prayer by just reading books. Like you have to sit with someone who prays, sitting with a godly man, godly woman who knows how to pray, and it just rubs off on you. And so we always want all of our leaders to be like, we always say like, who's your Joshua, or who's this, or who's that, like, and if God, if God was to take you home to glory, is there someone that was around you that could kind of step in right away?
Yeah.
And again, these things are vital to build early on. Because I felt like I had built a house and then realized I rewired everything wrong. I had to like seriously, like we got to like year 5 and I'm like, I wired all the electrical sockets wrong. Got to take the plumbing out. And so while you're on the front end of the core team early on, like these are vital conversations to have and think through. Because you'll feel it in year 4, 5, 6 if you don't do it right.
No. Lots of wisdom that you've all given on this episode and many others. So thank you guys for being on this episode and helping these planters develop teams and plant churches that will plant churches. So thank you for listening to the New Churches podcast. If you've enjoyed this show, share it with a friend. Be sure to leave a review there on your Apple Podcast app or Spotify or wherever you're listening. And go check us out on YouTube. And there's other resources you can go find on our YouTube channel and at newchurches.com. And we'll see you next time.